Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey kids, welcome to Grumpy Nostalgia, the Second Look Cinema podcast, the show where we go back to the blockbuster new release wall of our memory, we grab a copy off the shelf, we pop it in our VCR, and we see what time has done to it. I'm Justin, that's Mike.
Shintani.
And together we're here to help you navigate all the landmines littered down memory lane. Mike, I'm excited about this week.
Yeah, this is another one of those where we decide to not bother with the originals, because why, we know those. Let's look at something that was an interesting sequel that perhaps we forgot what it was about at the time we were watching it, and it needed a rewatch for sure.
Yeah, because I've garnered kind of a reputation as a guy that doesn't really dismiss movies, always trying to find the good part of them. This is kind of the opposite, Mike. I'm gonna set it right this week. I'm gonna defend a movie for once that I think has been bullied by film school dropouts for a long time here. And of course, we're going to be talking about Godfather Part 3, kids, from 1990.
Hooray.
Yeah. So before we get too far ahead, Mike, just want to make sure you're still batten down the hatches. We had Debbie come through our area here, Hurricane Debbie.
Debbie for why?
Debbie with a Y. You mean business when Debbie with the Y's out there. But we're waterlogged, and of course, it's back up to 99 degrees Fahrenheit here, so it's nice and steamy. It's lovely. So we're miserable. So we decided to watch a movie indoors just to stay alive. Another interesting fact, Mike, some more numbers are in. And we talked a little bit about how we were getting a little bit more traction here lately with ratings. Back to the Future, show 417 last week, was set a record for our highest number of downloads in 7 days, which is a key demographic for advertisers, Mike.
There's a lot of Huey Lewis fans out there.
Michael, we're bigger than U.S. Steel.
There you go. Thanks, Simon.
There you go. All right, so that ought to do that. So just take a shot every time we make a Godfather reference or a quote. So you got to be nice and toasty by the end of this show. So Mike, this was directed by Francis Ford Coppola. He's pretty good. He has 15 Oscar nominations total. He's won 5 of those. The coolest thing about him, however, he was George Lucas's inspiration for the character of Han Solo back in the day, because of his cavalier attitude and all that kind of cool stuff. He's done 38 movies, so he kind of knows what he's doing. The most recent being Megalopolis, which he's been writing and trying to produce for the last 32 years, I think, but didn't get a chance to see that. Got in a little trouble for kissing an extra. That's about the biggest news I've heard.
He got Me Too, huh? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he got Me Too. So, that's direct to video for me, probably. It was also written by Francis Ford Coppola, famously, along with his writing partner, Mario Puzo, Mike.
Yes.
Who got $500 a week for the chore of screenwriting this, and also agreed to a 2.5% of the gross. So good deal there by Mario. He wasn't a big fan of this book. He wrote it out of spite to be a little more commercial. Some of his earlier work he was much more proud of. He ended up writing the screenplay for Earthquake, Mike, which is one of our favorite 70s disaster movies.
Disaster, yes.
And he also had a hand in writing all these Superman movies where he got a $1 million advance, which for mid-70s was unheard of. It set a $54 million budget and was released on Christmas Day, December 5th, 1990.
Yeah, I remember watching in theater just right after Christmas.
Yeah. Okay. So, the Godfather movies are synonymous with film lore and film legend, and a lot of that's got to do with their dynamic cast, Mike. So why don't we go through the cast of this particular?
But this one has, I'm going to start off with our returnees from other movies. Like, of course, Al Pacino begins and ends with Michael Corleone. And, what can you say? It's interesting that he looked so much older in this than he did in the second movie. But when you realize that the amount of time that passes in the movie, it's 1980 or 79 then 80.
Yeah.
Is about the same amount of time that happened in real life, in real time. Like from 74 to 1990, from Godfather 2 to 3.
Yeah.
About 16 years. And I think the second one ends around, around 60, 61. So not a huge difference in the time, but he just looks so much older. And I didn't really like his hair doing this one. I want him to be more, that slick back Italian look. But
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there. Talia Shire returns as Connie, the
Hmm.
sister Corleone.
Constantina. I didn't know that was her full name.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's like we said before in our Rocky 3 one that she's very lucky. She's been in these two amazing franchises,
She's
and
good at straightening out Italian American
that's
men.
about it. Yeah, she really knows how to do the pillow talk with these guys, and
She's
also
yeah.
kind of like I don't know, be the mother figure. But she's
Mhm.
like, and it's funny. I'm not trying to say she had the same character in both franchises because in this one she's almost secretly evil.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's funny rewatching this Godfather 3, you see it.
Yeah.
She is not manipulating Michael, but is there's it's a very good role.
She took the hardships of that life for Connie that she had put
Yeah,
up over the previous two movies and kind of turned it on its side and said, "Okay, I'm
yeah.
taking charge of this now." So kind of cool
But sadly,
evolution.
there's no Merle, so you don't. We will never get to know what he does for a
We'll never
living.
know how
So
he makes his money.
I know. Al Neri, he reappears as kind of Michael's right hand man in this. Is
Hmm.
it's kind of bodyguard who opens and closes car doors for him.
Yeah.
Al Martino, who plays Johnny Fontaine with the guinea charm and the olive oil looks.
Yep.
And he's of course he sings in this movie, but I remember when back in the day when I used to go to a lot of vinyl record stores.
Yeah.
You always see an Al Martino record, and it was always funny because you're like, wow, who
Yeah.
buys these things? I know he had a music career outside the Godfather series, but it was like,
Well,
hey,
it was only for people that didn't look ridiculous, Mike.
She threw it all away just to make me look ridiculous. And a man in my position can't afford to be made to look ridiculous.
that's right.
They
And I
couldn't
hate
afford to
that.
look ridiculous.
I can't
Yeah.
afford to that.
Yeah.
Don Tomasino, I can't remember the actor's name, but he was in Godfather 2 where he famously gets his leg shot when they're
Yeah.
he and young Vito are
Hmm.
trying to whack the local mafioso in Sicily. But
Yeah.
he returns in this movie. Pretty much everybody else is kind of a newer character in a
Yeah.
way, and I can't go too far without mentioning Andy Garcia. This was, I think, the second movie I can remember him in. He was in Internal Affairs, which is one of my
Mhm.
kind of, and I don't want to call it like a secret favorite, but
Yeah.
it's my favorite Richard Gere movie if that's goes for anything. And
I would have Chicago, but whatever.
yeah,
No, sorry.
no.
Inside joke, folks. Yeah.
But yeah, he's Corleone. He's one of Sonny's let's say bastard sons. I don't know if they're trying to say that he was the kid. They show his mom in this movie briefly,
Same
and
actress.
I don't know if it's the same. Okay, it's the same act. Is it the
Yeah.
actress that he's banging on the wedding day, or is
That's
it the one
correct. Yeah.
that he's
Yeah.
at the house of? Okay,
Yeah.
because he's at the before he gets killed in the causeway. He's at he's at a house where he's doing his business.
Same one. Same
It's the
actress.
same lady. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I figured Sonny got around more than just that. But yeah, he's Andy Garcia's Cuban, but Cuban American.
Mhm.
Passes Italian pretty well. Joe Mantegna, famously from Criminal Minds, is Joey Zaza, the kind of the local Brooklyn mafioso in this movie,
Yeah.
who's very similar to John Gotti. I'm sure there was intention there. He's supposed to be
That's a good
the
pickup. He was the inspiration for that. Mike.
he's the Dapper Don in this.
One of the inspirations. Yeah. Good
Yeah.
job.
Zaza. Bridget Fonda appears briefly. And another act of nepotism. I was surprised at watching this that she was only in the movie so briefly. I thought she had a media role, but hey,
Mhm.
she got a little scared off from the lifestyle, I guess. But yeah, she's Peter Fonda's daughter.
Yeah.
George Hamilton, who plays Michael's kind of lawyery
Yeah.
accountant,
Uh-huh.
who used to be known for acting, but later became known just for having a good tan. Eli Wallach, he's kind of every Godfather movie has a older guy in it that wants Michael to make a deal.
I must accept my age and grow my olives into meat.
Hmm.
And this is that he plays that role. But yeah, he's classic actor. He was in, you would know him from Magnificent Seven, where he doesn't want to wear a badge, and also he was the ugly in Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So
That's right. Yeah.
your classic character. He plays Don Altobello. And then you have Father Guido Sarducci from Silent Night Live is in this movie as
Yeah.
It's kind of, I guess he's Mike's like religious connection. He is Don Novello's the actor's name, but yeah, he
Yeah,
plays
he,
his.
he played his PR guy, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think Martin Scorsese's mom is in this movie
she
briefly.
is. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I saw it, I was like, wait, but then I don't think she was in the credits, but I couldn't remember.
I like this one. The dog, one dog goes one way and the other dog goes the other way.
One is going east and the other one is going west. So what?
That's pretty much it. There are a lots of Italian names and faces. John Savage was in the Hagen. Tom
Yeah.
Hagen he's killed off screen, I guess, before the actions of for this movie.
Yeah, I'll get to the reason for that, sure.
And yeah, I'm sure Duvall wanted more money or something. But
There you go.
anyway, it's kind of like
All right.
Brando too. And that's pretty much it. I wanted to ask you who Carmine Coppola was, who did the music, but that's credits for another time. I don't know if she was Francis' sister or
I think it's his brother who also did the music for Dracula.
Carmine is a brother. Okay, it
We
was a
talked
guy.
about that for Dracula, remember?
I don't remember. Are you kidding me?
It was like a year ago. Whatever. Okay, my fault. Sorry.
I don't even know where I started, man. I don't. Where is it? Oh yeah. Yeah. Did I forget anybody?
No.
Enzo the baker. He wasn't in here, but he's
Yeah, he
referenced.
was.
He was
Yeah.
the old guy. This art was
All
at the Sun.
All right. I'm going to pause the show and get Mike a subscription to Ginkgo biloba, and then we'll get. All right, good job, Mike. Thank you very much. Just some other notes on that cast. So you mentioned Andy Garcia. The studio didn't like him; they thought he appeared too Mexican for some reason. They also auditioned Alec Baldwin, Nicolas Cage. So that
Those are all three very hairy guys, by the way.
yeah, and that kind of puts some of the nepotism things at bay
Yeah.
because, of course, he's famously Francis's nephew. Tom Cruise was also in the running for this. He auditioned, and Billy Zane. Talk about which one of these is not like the other. He was also involved. Frank Sinatra tried to play the role of Don Altobello. This is interesting because famously he was one of the biggest objectors to the original Godfather being made because he didn't like he assumed that Johnny Fontaine's role was based after him. He did everything he could to stop that movie, but he came around. But he didn't get enough money. Speaking of money, that's why Robert Duvall is not in this movie. He wanted $5 million. Francis said, "We can't do that." He said, "Well." He said, "I don't make movies just for money," which is interesting. That's what people say when they're rich. But he turned it down. That's why that role was kind of rewritten for George Hamilton. Winona Ryder was originally cast for Mary, famously played now by Sophia Coppola. Julia Roberts was also considered for that role at one point. We mentioned Joe Mantegna, playing Joey Zaza. My favorite role that he plays in a mafia setting is, of course, Fat Tony from The Simpsons, Mike.
Oh, that's his voice. Okay.
Yeah.
I am not so much disappointed as I am blinded with rage.
Al Pacino wanted $7 million for this film and a part of the gross before he would even consider playing it. But Francis said, "We can't do it." And so he ended up accepting $5 million, Mike. I'm assuming that Francis made him an offer he couldn't refuse, but it was very difficult because you got to have Michael here, of course. I don't think you could recast him.
And you got to have cartoon.
Yeah, exactly. Sophia Coppola did not want to be in this movie. She did.
Really?
She wanted to get into the business, but she was more interested, obviously, in directing and writing. But her father pushed her, and she did it as a favor to him.
She was big into fashion too.
Yeah. So and kind of see what the damage it kind of did to her all these years. The stigma that she was attached to her for this movie is relatively unfair, but still there nonetheless. We had a lot of movies going on in 1990, Mike, especially the holiday season. You had Edward Scissorhands and Mermaids in the theater, both of which were starring Winona Ryder. Probably the reason she dropped out of this. At that time, she said she had exhaustion. I think she was going through her breakup with Johnny Depp, so she ended up leaving this film. She was going to play the role of actually going to play Bridget Fonda's role, shorter, smaller role, but she backed out of that as well. Also had Bonfire of the Vanities in theaters, Mike.
Oh,
which
don't get me started on that.
We got to talk about it someday, I think. Misery was also in theaters during this time, as well as Predator 2, Mike.
Wow.
Again, another film series we did out of order in our podcast. Talked about that one first. So Ghost was the number one movie that year, followed closely by Pretty Woman, Home Alone, Hunt for Red October was fifth, and this didn't come into like 46, but I think it's just because of its December release date. The music scene in 1990, Mike, was really fun. You had Candy by James Newell Osterberg, also known as Iggy Pop. Kate Pearson from the B-52s is also on that track as well. You had Freedom by Yorgos Iraklis Panoia, also known as George Michael. Right? You had Play That Funky Music by Rob Van Winkle, commonly known as Vanilla Ice.
I didn't know he redid that one.
Yeah, of course he did, because he's white. He played.
I never heard that.
Yeah, you're not missing anything. It's okay.
Well, Cherry's white, except for one of the players.
That's true. You had Justify My Love by Madonna Louise Veronica Ciccone, also known as Madonna. And then finally you had A New York Minute by Don Henley, also known as Don Henley. There you go.
I wonder why Madonna wasn't in The Godfather 3.
She auditioned, but
Okay.
she wanted too much money. So
Gosh.
the film had a $54 million budget, and you got to wonder where some of that went to, Mike. So
Costumes.
maybe wine and olive oil.
Shooting in Sicily, probably.
Yeah. On the pop culture scene, Mike, we always kind of talk about way back in the day what was going on there. And that's the nostalgia part. McDonald's started, this was the last year they fried their French fries in beef tallow, 93% beef tallow, Mike, which made them taste so good. They converted to vegetable oil that year. Never quite the same. Everyone was watching Twin Peaks and pretending they knew what was going on. Big video games for Santa that year were Super Mario World, Final Fantasy III, and Dr. Mario, Mike, which I'm guessing two of those three are played in your house weekly.
Yeah.
Still. Yeah.
Dr. Mario gets a little Tetris-y fast for me. And you get to a certain level and you're like, I can't do it. And,
No. It's like the game perfection when you're a kid.
Yeah.
Everything against the time around no good. Windows 3.1 came out this year. And it sold 3 million copies for its user interface. They credit Solitaire, Mike, the game Solitaire, to help reinforce the drag and drop mechanic for people using a mouse, because that had never been done before. So a lot of people learned how to use a computer mouse playing Solitaire. Yours truly included, Mike.
A lot of people wasted time at work playing Solitaire.
There you still
and
do.
And Minesweeper.
Still this day. The spines aren't going to sweep themselves, buddy.
There's still people, there's still like I don't know if it's a Reddit kind of community or no, not, but there's still a community of people who try to do records in Minesweeper.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
It's a fun game. Yeah. This was the year that we famously entered into the Operation Desert Shield, which became Desert Storm. Kind of remember that a little bit. But, we came in and sorted out all that Middle East nonsense. Now there's no problems whatsoever. A matinee movie would cost you $3.50 in 1990. You could buy a blank VHS tape to tape this illegally off cable for $2.49, Mike.
Nice.
Remember the exhaustive VHS collections you had in your house?
Yeah.
Well, I can still see them on your camera there.
There's still a few.
It's just interesting how much space they took up and how proud people were of their videotape collection, So yeah, that's all done. This was the year that the X rating was replaced by NC-17, Mike, because the stigma attached to adult movies with the X rating. So there you go. So that was a trip down memory lane, Mike. That seems like a long time ago all this stuff happened.
Oh, come on. It was only 34 years ago.
Only 34 years ago. So
only.
All right. So as we mentioned before, this movie has a reputation for being not good. And I feel at least, and we'll probably flesh this out as we go, it's probably a little unjustified. So typically we like to go back to a movie and make fun of it. I think we're going to try to go course correct and go back to a movie that's unjustly made fun of and try to defend it this time. So, Mike, we're in the theater. $7 covered both of our tickets. We're good to go. You ready to hit the button?
Let's do it.
So our movie opens up in 1979, Mike, and we see aged Don Corleone, Michael Corleone. He's 60 years old at the time of the story here. And there's a lot of parallels to the original movie here, Mike. It's basically, if you break it down scene by scene, it's almost the same movie. There's an enormous 30-minute opening scene here where there's a party in New York celebrating Michael's charitable award from the Pope, no less.
It's a Godfather trope. You got to have a family get
Yeah.
together at the
Yeah.
start.
And this includes, introduces the element that they really try and reinforce here that he's gone completely legit because he's cleaned all his money. He's got out of the casinos. He's done all these illegitimate businesses now, making charitable donations. We meet Joey Zaza here, who's still in the underground, and he asked for a meeting with Michael, and apparently Michael's illegitimate bastardo nephew, fathered by Sonny Corleone in the first movie, is causing trouble. He's working for Joey Zaza. He brings them both in the room, and we get really introduced to how well Andy Garcia is mimicking kind of James Caan's inherent behaviors here. He's a hothead, and but I mean, probably one of the coolest performances I think in movie history. And Andy Garcia in this role, I mean, he saves this movie by leaps and bounds. By far the most interesting character here, but
for sure.
Michael makes him sort it out, and they do a hug, and then Vincent, the character played by Andy Garcia, takes a big bite out of his ear, Mike Tyson style, and that just sets a bad tone for the movie. But there's the half hour of the movie is just this scene, and it's really a callback to the original wedding scene in the first Godfather, going so far as to including the music with Johnny Fontaine.
And then Johnny Fontaine comes along with his olive oil voice and Guinea charm.
And along comes Johnny Fontaine, Mike. He sings this song, and he serenades Connie.
Gets her pregnant.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, different movie.
They bring out a big cake, and it's made by Enzo the baker. And there's people that are wanting to meet Michael, and he's too busy. He's trying to enjoy this thing. So it's really kind of an homage.
And
I think
they're trying to eat their can of peas.
Hey, what's with the food around here?
What's the matter?
Kid comes up to me in a white jacket, gives me a Ritz cracker and a chopped liver. He says, can of peas. I said, can of peas in my ass. That's a Ritz cracker and chopped liver. He goes, hey, what? Tiene abono car. Bring out the peppers and sardines. You might have room over here.
that's right. I wish that character hadn't died. I would have loved for Frank to be in this.
No, he had to die like they did in the Roman times.
So after about 30 minutes, we kind of move on to the beginning of the first act. That's kind of the overture, really. Michael's in New York City now because the Corleone house is just kind of dilapidated. They kind of show you their opening credits to kind of show you the remnants of that famous location, just like abandoned now. But he's trying to buy the Vatican share of this company named Mobiliare from this kind of questionable charactered father called Archbishop Gilday. He's been mismanaging the Vatican's funds, and Michael wants to buy him out.
And they're at St. Patrick's there in New York.
Yeah, we just walked right past that a few months ago. The Pope is resisting, given Michael's reputation in New York City, but he's dying, and the papacy is expecting him to die, so they're just kind of waiting it out. So the mafia in New York gets word that Michael's going to get a big chunk of this Immobiliare, make him one of the richest men in the world, and they want in. So they invite everybody to all the 5 families being on top of a building. It's kind of coordinated by Joey Zaza, and there's a couple of things that happen here. One, Mike, there's this big hit where Joey conveniently leaves the meeting early, along with Don Ottobello, played by Eli Wallach, who's trying to be the peacemaker. But apparently that ear-biting incident has caused some friction between the old families. And there's a big hit where the helicopters come in and machine gun essentially the entire Cosa Nostra of New York. Michael manages to escape with Vincent's help. And then he has a diabetic coma as a result of that.
Yeah, that was a surprise. Like, wait, what's going on?
And this is where he utters the famous line later that night. Just this one, I think they're out. They pull me back in, and suddenly we're in the mafia movie again, Mike, which is cool. So we get introduced to Kay. The subplot here is he's reunited with Kay, played by Diane Keaton. His son Anthony doesn't want to be a lawyer anymore, and he asked his permission to let him go to Italy to be an opera singer, drop out of college to be a lawyer. That's this interesting subplot. His relationship with his 2 children here. Also, Sophia Coppola.
It's interesting too. Is he has his stepdad is a lawyer. I guess a successful lawyer too.
Yeah. But there's some shenanigans, and there's a lot of plot twists and commiseration between the mafia, the legitimate businesses, the Catholic Church. It's a little complicated if you're not following very closely. The plot's very confusing. I won't lie.
It is, and not to interrupt you, but a little tangent here, but not a tangent. I feel like not necessarily in the first movie as much with the Salieri and the drugs thing. But the second Godfather 2 and this one in particular, I always get confused a little bit about, the ins and outs of why, like why Joey Zaza was so personally affronted when they, nobody could get in that deal with the Mobiliari. And it's just strange to me how that these, how angry these guys get for certain things that are said. And you're like, what happened? Even in the first movie, I guess too, where he knew it was Don Barzini all along after that meeting. It's like, hey, how did he know it was Don Barzini?
Yeah,
from
let
that
us in
meeting
on that.
And
Yeah.
it was like, there's always that little bit of like just
Yeah.
heel turn or just turn and I don't quite understand.
I'm with you.
This movie in particular was a little bit complicated with the Mobiliari Vatican bank that was in $700 million in debt. I'm sorry, $759 million in debt.
Yeah.
And that was a little confusing to me.
Well,
but
all
yeah,
three movies are inherently very complex and very
a
confusing.
little bit, yeah.
But-
in a way, it's
yeah.
like it's confusing. You know the general gist of what's going on, so it's like almost it's like you don't need to know all the details in a way.
It's that situation where it's you can get through it, but you don't want to embarrass yourself by asking, what is that guy doing? You don't want to be that guy, right?
Why is Hyman Roth so mad? Well,
Yeah.
Michael didn't deliver the suitcase in his room,
But what I thought was interesting here for me, at least, the third one was the less confusing for me on the second watch. Because I was paying more attention because I was trying to find things to justify how good it was. So I was paying extra attention. I kind of knew the details of what was going on, and it made it much more enjoyable for sure. Getting back, so there's a bunch of conflict and everything, and so the mob, the existing mob that wasn't shot or killed at the hit, mostly European and Sicily-based mob. They hired this guy Mosca, the Fly, Mike, as a famous assassin to kill Michael because Michael's going to Sicily to see his son sing in the opera, and he's hoping that he can put together some sort of, in hindsight at least, some sort of a reunion with Kay and be part of her life again and try to restore what's left of their relationship. And that was an interesting. They didn't spend a whole lot of time with Diane Keaton, but the angst that she's had to go through in the last two movies is really, you can kind of see what it did to her and how depressed she is. Even when she gives in a little bit and can see that she still has feelings for him, 2 minutes later, someone knocks on the door and says Don Tomasino's been shot and he has to be whisked away. So you just, the empathy you have to feel for her. So she's
put Kay back in the room. Close that door.
Yeah. So, but that was an interesting, I thought, really great little subplot they threw out the whole movie. So the film's conclusion is that during the opera, every great movie ends with a finale in the opera, Mike. I think the hitmen come in, and as they're exiting the theater, there's a failed assassination attempt. Michael gets one in the shoulder, but unfortunately, his daughter Mary gets shot in the chest, and he's left to ponder the reality of that circumstance on the steps of the opera house. And it's horrible because they're playing this dramatic music and classical music, and he's wailing and
just screaming.
Yeah, and it kind of there's this montage of like memories through the previous three movies, and it's like a requiem for all the stuff that's happened, and kind of like a penance for all the bad stuff he's done in his life. And the movie kind of fades to black here, Mike. And then it kind of, there's a brief little end scene there where we see Michael sitting on a little chair in a public square, a very aged Michael. And he kind of tips over and falls dead in the public square. And then there's a little puppy that runs around next to him, and you get the credits. And
I thought it was nice because it was nice bookend because that's where his first wife explodes in the car in that same little plaza in front of his house.
Yeah,
and it's just it was like, oh my gosh, I just thought that was really neatly done how they bookended it.
Yeah, it's the little town in Corleone, Sicily, where his father as a little boy was taken away. Just kind of the symmetry of the story. Just kind of, I thought that was very good. That's just a great way to end the movie. So there's 2 hours and 40 minutes in like 18 minutes, guys. There's much more nuance to this film there than just the quick summary I put together. But if we talked about every scene here, we'd be here for 3 or 4 episodes. So Mike, let's talk about awards and accolades, shall we?
Sure.
It had a $6 million opening, probably not as big as they would have liked. It ended up doing $66 million domestically and 136 million worldwide. This much maligned movie got 7 Oscar nominations. It got 7 Golden Globe nominations. People forget that part. But they do remember that it got 2 Razzies for Worst New Star and Supporting Actress. Unfortunately, both those are Sophia Coppola. She ended up beating Roseanne for Look Who's Talking Now in that category. But she did beat Donald Trump for best worst new star. She beat Donald Trump, who was in the movie Ghost Can't Do It.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
But don't worry, Donald Trump did win for worst supporting actor that year. So there you go.
And his casino got to appear in Godfather 3.
There you go. Yeah, so it all works out. There's a couple versions of this movie. I don't know which one you saw, Mike. Probably the one, if you saw the one on Amazon.
Yeah, I ended up watching the Coda one.
Yeah, okay.
So I didn't see the original theatrical cut. This was the one they did for the anniversary, I think.
Yeah, there's a few more minutes changed. It's a cleaner cut. A few things are taken out. It's a little bit shorter. Some scenes are cut. Not a heck of a lot of difference, but I think it's a good watch.
Essentially, he doesn't die at the end, which surprised me.
Yeah.
Like, I guess they want to show you that he's still living with his guilt
to
and all
suffer.
That. Yeah.
Well, there's a great scene in the middle of the movie we didn't talk about a whole lot when he goes to the Vatican to discuss potential dealings with the Pope.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He meets who was eventually going to be the new Pope that gets murdered by
the Archbishop.
Yeah. Is that he confesses his sin of killing Fredo. And there's a line I just love where he's asking for absolution, and the priest says, "Your crimes are horrible, and it is just that you suffer for them." And
yeah,
he has a little diabetic attack during that. It was a very emotional kind of thing that just captures 30 years worth of storytelling in this nice one little scene.
Oh, yeah.
Michael knows he can't be absolved, which is really cool.
It's the best scene in the movie because it's like. Even the Cardinals like explaining it's a scene I've even quoted my kids as far as like, going into a situation, don't let anybody affect you. It's the rock that's supposed to be, Europeans and how Christianity's been all around them. But look at this rock that's sitting in the water all these years, and he breaks it open and it's dry inside. And, it just like the men, Christianity doesn't get to them, just like the water didn't get inside this rock. And it's such a great little,
These are, line.
And then like you say, the little scene right after where Michael, is almost forced to reveal his sins, and it's just really emotional, and it's kind of the centerpiece of the movie for me.
And given the fact that he did exactly what he did in the first movie, like the last, he kills all the villains. They're all taken out in 5 different vignettes, exactly like the first Godfather, and it's all juxtaposed against this beautiful opera. I don't know if you noticed it, Mike, but there's a scene in the opera where the guy gets his ear bit again, and they cut to Andy Garcia, and he gets a big kick out of that.
Yeah, yeah. It's a Sicilian thing too.
Yeah,
like
it's throwing down the gauntlet for revenge, and
it's saying we're going to duel to the death.
Yeah. But I mean, these are everything we just talked about are elements of good filmmaking, and I just don't understand the reputation this movie has garnered. I've said it before in a previous episode. I don't think Godfather 3 is that bad, and I don't think Godfather 2 is that good. And I don't mean that Godfather 2 is not one of the greatest movies ever made. I just think for some reason, people were looking for a reason to turn on this franchise, and they took it out on a 16-year-old girl who didn't want to do it in the first place. So, let's talk about it anyway, Mike. So let's run it through our grumpy meter. That's where we revisit the movies we watch as younger people and review them again as grumpy old jerks. So, Mike, what's your assessment of the movie the first time you saw it, and then the most recent watch, and what's changed, if anything?
I think it was too much of a prisoner of the moment at the time when I watched this, and like I said, I watched it after it had already been released for a few weeks, and I think by that point you're like, okay, well, I'm going in to see this movie, and I know Godfather 1 and 2 very well. This is it's why did they make this movie? Hopefully, it's got a fitting ending to it, and I think at the time I liked it. It was kind of a victim for me. I'm one of those weirdos who thinks the first movie's better than the second one. Um, the second had too many from this is my opinion only, but the second one had too many like, congressional hearing scenes and too much intrigue as far like I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
I had trouble understanding exactly the gist of who was getting what. I can understand a corrupt senator in Nevada and getting some kickbacks from the casino. That was, I can figure that out. But there was a lot of talking. And that's still kind of the way I feel about the third one. Watching it the first time, I had no idea what Michael was trying to do. He's trying to get a position on the board of this company that is supposedly the largest landowner in the world,
Yeah.
and that would in turn get him a whole bunch of. But then there's these German guys that did not want him to be in the picture. And there's this Don Lucchese guy. It got confusing for me with the Vatican kind of stuff.
Okay.
But I liked it. I think it was well done as far as just a complete story. I think on its own it would be considered a great movie.
Yeah.
It's too bad you have to keep looking back to the first two. I think it's a victim of a lot of what we see now as far as member berries or nostalgia bait for some of it. And
Mhm.
to be a devil's advocate, there's, like we said, there's the family get together. It has this kind of formula. And there's the Italian celebration in like the street of Brooklyn, and of course you see a mafioso get shot, just like in Godfather 2.
Yeah.
You have the older mafioso that doesn't, gets mad at Michael doesn't make a deal like 1 and 2. You have an older Corleone giving advice to a younger character about how enemies will approach him.
Yeah.
That's another one. You have poor Kay. You have her outside the room where Michael's discussing business. You have bad guys all dying in a montage at the end of the movie. And like I said, I think that's probably one of the reasons the movie probably got hate at the time. And it was one of those cases of why'd you make the same movie again and just spice it up with like scenes we already seen? And
Yeah.
even like, showing the picture that Tony drew of his dad in the limo, it's like, here's your callback from the second one.
Yeah.
To me, that bothered me a little bit on my second watch.
Really?
Well, a little bit. Like I
Okay.
said, I still think it's a good movie. It's just, I guess nowadays we see so much of that, and it's hard to get away from looking at something and just saying, "Oh, look at that! Look, they're trying to throw you some nostalgia bait."
Yeah.
That's the one thing that bothered me. But overall, like I said, I was able to understand it a little bit better on this, like you said, on this rewatch. Just a little
Mhm.
bit easier to understand the story.
Yeah.
And for that, I'd say it's still a worthwhile movie. Unfortunately, Sophia Coppola's acting, especially the scene where her and Vincent first get together when they're at his club,
Mhm.
it's really bad.
Yeah.
And and it's sad because I mean, if like when we know the backstory, she really didn't want to do this. It's like, well,
Yeah.
her dad probably shouldn't have put her in this role. To
Yeah.
be
You
honest,
should have saw it. Okay.
Winona Ryder would have been much better. Too
Yeah.
bad Johnny Depp had to make her tired.
Make me tired. All right, Mike. Thanks. I'm not too far away from my assessment of it. So the first time I watched these, as a 20-year-old kid, you know, I knew I was supposed to like it, so I did. And I don't think I had the context or the frame of reference to appreciate how good any of these movies were when I was watching them at that young age. As 30 years worth of filmmaking or film watching and going back and the film history and the things that I've taken in since then really helps me differentiate how much better these things are than everything else. So I think it was a little confused, and I found it just as confusing as 2 and almost as, like I said, as confusing as 1. So I've gone back to these movies. I usually watch these like once a year, all 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
This time I watched it with a much more critical eye because the theme for me going into the show was retribution and trying to figure out ways to defend this movie. This movie in today's standards is 14 Oscars.
Yeah, for
runs
sure.
the table. I think in the 90s, it was probably not a good fit to put this type thing out. I think the fan service that you mentioned there with Enzo and Johnny Fontaine, and then every little thing they could possibly reference, I think probably people misinterpreted that as pandering. But I think what watching again here, in 2024, I think it's more of a requiem. I think it just parallels how the symmetry of the story, what Coppola was trying to do. I think given the context of what I know about Sophia Coppola now, I probably gave her a pass on. I was trying to find what's so horrible about her. And honestly, if you didn't know anything going into this, you probably wouldn't have said much about it. I think a lot of people were. I think there was a prejudice against her before anybody even saw the first print. Someone said she's really horrible in this, and people were looking for that.
Right.
So I think the play was contaminated by. I think
But she was bad.
I mean, yes. I mean, she wasn't.
But she's
wasn't
not as
great.
She wasn't the reason people dogpile the movie.
Yeah,
but she got a
doesn't-
lot of hatred. It's kind of like the guy was it Ahmed Best from
Yeah, well,
plays
yeah. Well, I was
Jar
going
Jar
to
Binks?
say Jake Lloyd in Phantom Menace. I mean,
Yeah,
people want to villainize somebody. Somebody has to be the scapegoat. So Jar
Yeah.
Jar and little Anakin, you know,
little Annie.
people realize that Star Wars movies are for kids, and then when they went to go see it, they didn't get that same feeling, so they took it out on the kid. I mean, that's kind of what happened with that movie. I think that's probably in play for this one here too. But on my second watch, I'm a 5 out of 5 guy for this movie. I think it's brilliant.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I think it's been unfairly criticized. I think people that don't like it are just haters, and that's a very basic argument. I can't be more
Yeah.
sophisticated than that. I think people are just like to find problems with things, and but just think about what this franchise has given us over 30 years with the filmmaker, 40 years worth of filmmaking. I mean, this was a gift, and you should accept it for what it was. It wasn't in your
Yeah.
world before, and all they did was make it, great 9 hours worth of cinema for you to enjoy. So shut up and take your medicine, guys. That's my advice. All right. All right. So on that cynical note, we typically do a list or some sort of funny little thing at this venture in the program, but me and Mike decided we wanted to start something new. We're going to read some mail.
Mailbag.
Yeah, but notice I didn't say fan mail. I'm saying we're going to read some mail. But you guys have been kind enough to reach out to us as we've been begging you for 3 years or so. We finally got some callbacks, so we're going to introduce a new segment called
Ride, postman! Ride! You hear me? I said ride!
obviously one of our
Yes.
favorite movies, The Postman,
Oh, just like I can picture that statue now.
where Mr. Kruger from Seinfeld is screaming to Kevin Costner to run away.
Yes, wait for his shot.
All right, so we're gonna address some correspondence we've had with the podcast here. So, Mike, why don't you take the first one?
All right. We don't get a lot of emails from our fans, but we decided to finally dust off a couple of these that we had from the Wayback Machine here.
Yep.
And I got this one a while back. It's from Jurgen from Mainz in Germany. He says, "Hi guys, love your show. It sometimes makes me wish I was old like you. Okay. So I could know what it was like to see these flicks when they first came out." Oh, well, thank
There
you, I
go.
guess, Jurgen.
Thank you, Jurgen.
Before your podcast, I usually had to ask me grands about them. Okay, well, thank you. Just watched The Rock and wondered why a movie with such a huge budget couldn't find a stuntman with a better fitting wig. That's
Jurgen's after her own heart. Isn't he?
Yeah, I like this guy. Jurgen, I don't know what to tell you. We saw it in Cliffhanger, and we saw it in this movie also, and The Rock. It was it is a good question. Bruckheimer movie, you would think big budget. There's a lot of explosions. There's a lot of action. There's money spent on fancy cars and driving through San Francisco.
Yeah.
But Connery's wig, his stuntman could not find it. I mean, it takes you out of the picture just for a few seconds. You're like, wait, come on, that's ridiculous. And it's a good question. As much as it's just a good statement, and
Wow.
I appreciate this guy letting us, kind of obviously a good listener.
I think I have an on the spot scientific theory to address that, Mike.
Oh, good.
I would venture to guess that these films at that era were made before digital technology and before everybody was on the internet.
Oh,
And you can't do a freeze frame analysis on everything. People had to go to the theater and look at this thing at 60 feet tall for a split second. And I think Hollywood studios, for the most part, they could say, well,
yeah.
they have to. The event of making a movie is ridiculously complicated, and from a logistic and accounting standpoint,
You only get one take.
every penny's accounted for. Why spend time or money? There's no value add to make sure the wig's
Yeah.
right because they're only going to see it for an eighth of a second or 35 frames, Mike. And I'm thinking until I think it's with digital technology and YouTube videos, and you can do
Yeah. I
you can
think
literally do frame by frame analysis now, where people try to spot problems, which was also not a thing back then.
I
Movie
think
mistakes
I
were
think I think
analyzed.
Jurgen's too young for our demographic, and
Yeah,
he's expecting these like like you said, kind of a CGI repair of people's
yeah,
hairdos, and I don't think that could happen back in '96, right?
yeah. Well,
So
Jurgen, we hope you get the help that you need, but thank you for
yeah, well,
corresponding with us.
thanks.
Yeah, and go Mainz. All right, so my first one's not so much an email as it is as a review that I just took to heart very well, and I just really appreciate this one. This is from Cafe Drake, username Cafe Drake from Saugerties, New York, and he says, "Don't worry about the abrasive tone. The grumpiness referred to in the podcast title is one of the gentle and very funny, very amusing variety.
Hmm.
Highly recommended for the insight, the knowledge, banter, and the enthusiasm behind the host's obvious affections for 80s and 90s cinema." And that's a very pleasant,
That is
very,
very
very
good. Wow.
humbling review. And I know Cafe Drake, he follows the Instagram page, and he's always provided some good feedback and follows the show and likes all of our posts. So uh Cafe Drake and Socrates, we want to thank you for your continued support, and we're very humbled by the nice words.
Thank you.
I wish more of your Socrates friends would reach out because we're very big in that town. But again, thanks for reaching out. He happens to be a vegan chef, Mike, and some of the pictures I
Nice.
saw on his page uh, while I was eating my bacon double cheeseburger, uh, they look fantastic. So
Do you have your beef tallow fries?
I have eaten my beef
Okay.
meltdown. That's my own nostalgia. But again, Cafe Drake, thank you for those kind words. We're really humbled, so appreciate that. All right, Mike, it's back around to you.
Ah,
What's in the mailbag?
this next one's from Merle from Tahoe. I'm sorry. I was I got that confused. I think he was asking me what he did for a living.
I don't know this
Um,
girl.
I don't know this guy. This is from Maggie, from Badger, Alaska. So, hey, thank you. Big Kevin Costner fan here, but I was inspired to rewatch Waterworld and The Postman. And yes, he's a bit full of himself. Oh, thank you, Maggie.
Yeah.
But there's a big but here.
Everyone I know has a big butt.
He can't be the most overrated actor. At least agree with me there. Um, okay. Let's say Mr. Costner didn't exist in this universe. Who in your mind is the new most overrated actor?
Oh,
Very
wow.
good.
That's
It's a
great.
good one. Isn't it a good one?
That's a great
Um,
one.
I had a couple people that came to mind. And it's kind of like our list. Here's my first impulse was Jack Black, but it's hard for me to overrate a comedian as an actor because
I think you have to overrate somebody who has been claimed to be good.
yes, yeah, good one. Drew Barrymore came to mind too. Obviously she had her Coppola-like connections with having a family name and acting, and
Yeah.
I had trouble thinking of something good she was in. Firestarter, don't get me started.
Mhm.
But Channing Tatum, he came to mind as my official choice as most overrated actor. Um, I haven't seen him in anything good. You can correct me if you're wrong. Any action movie he's been in, he's okay. 21 Jump Street, he's trying his brand of comedy.
Yeah.
One movie I remember him being was Side Effects. He was, had Jude Law, had Catherine Zeta-Jones, and Rooney Mara, and then you had Channing Tatum, who was like, why was he in that? He doesn't belong with those other actors. And I mean, dear John, please, I don't. Anyway, I don't know where I'm much further to go on that, but he was the first one that came to mind, Maggie. And let's just agree that even people wouldn't watch Fly Me to the Moon to see him, and Magic Mike. Were they
Yeah.
watching that to see his acting skills? I don't think so.
No, that's a good one, Mike.
So there you go.
Wow. Maggie has broken my brain. That's a great one. So I was going to say Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart, but I think that follows the Jack Black rule.
Yeah,
So
a little bit. A little
that's like,
bit.
I Pop-Tart can't go stale because it's never fresh. That's the kind of argument I think. So this one's going to hurt a little bit, but the first one that comes to mind for me is Dennis Quaid.
Okay.
And there's one extremely notable exception. He played Gordon Cooper in The Right Stuff. He was brilliant in the role of a lifetime, perfect. But I want to say a lot of the movies he's in, he's a bit of a ham.
Yeah, he's himself.
Yeah, the role he played when he played Jerry Lee Lewis in Great Balls of Fire.
Yeah.
that talk about cringe. But I always found like he doesn't. I don't see the appeal of him other than that. So on the spot, I would pick him. I'm sure there's someone more deserving of that title, but for me, I'm going to go with a Dennis Quaid. But Maggie, that's a great question.
I'll go Randy Quaid. And thank you, Maggie. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So my the last letter we got here is an email from Ken in Manuka, Illinois.
Manuka.
Yes, that's the hometown of not too far from where I grew up. But that's the hometown of Nick Offerman, Mike, if you're curious.
Oh, okay.
Ken writes, "How do you pick your movies, and how long does it take to make an episode?" Well,
interesting.
So, quite frankly, Ken, that's none of your business. So, but actually, I can tell you what, on my side at least, we don't really have any real methodology on picking the movies. Me and Mike just kind of look at each other dumbfounded after we finally finish one and say, "Okay, what now? What do we do?" We were a little more scheduled the first season, but these have been just kind of more improvised. I think it's got a lot to do with what's going on in pop culture. Like we did Time Bandits because the Time Bandits show was coming out on Apple Plus.
Yeah.
We're hoping to catch some hashtag relevance a lot of times, or we'll couple the timing out with a new movie that has some sort of applicable theme to a movie that we did back in the 80s or 90s that has mostly generally a remake. We have we have a little bag that we keep our favorites in when we get stumped. I know Mike's had Broken Arrow in that bag for about 3 years now.
So I need to see another Travolta movie.
Yeah, so I mean, we have a couple of emergency.
He wears a lot of wigs.
So, if we ever have to hit the eject button, we've always got something to go to, but we always try to see what's relevant in pop culture and go with that from there. As far as how long does it take to make an episode, that depends on how much we like or dislike the movie. Typically, the ones that are good takes a little bit longer to do because we have to find some sort of content because it's easier to riff on things that are stupid. But generally, on my side, Mike, I don't know about you, but it takes me. We have to watch the movie, of course, which is a couple hours, and then we have to write our notes and our scripts, which for me takes about 2 hours or so. We spend about 2 hours recording these things. You only hear the good stuff, while the stuff never makes it to final copy. It takes me about 3 or 4 hours to edit. So I would say roughly about 12 man hours total to do every episode when it's all said and done. That's 11 and a half on my side and a half hour for Mike. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, typically that's about the amount of legwork that it goes in because me and Mike have to coordinate our schedules. And it sounds, like we talked about before, a show every 10 days doesn't sound that bad. But imagine you have to do an oral book report in front of your class for an hour every 10 days about, it's tough to find content and things like that. But yeah, about 12 hours, I think, total when it's all said and done.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like you said about mine, you're a little off. It's probably more like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
I watch the opening credits, then I go to 8 times speed, then I watch the ending credits. Write a couple of names down on the list of the cast, then fumble for what they were in, and then I hit a button that says join, and I'm ready to go.
I go to Chat AI and say write script. But yeah, so Ken, that was a terrible answer to your very simple question, but
sorry. I would love to go to Manuka. That sounds fun.
There you go. All right, so that's going to kind of wrap it up, guys. So if you were interested in this show for some reason, you can check us out on Instagram. As I mentioned, it's Grumpy Nostalgia. You can send us an email at nostalgiagrumps@gmail.com. If you're listening to our show on the Buzzsprout website, which I notice a lot of you are, there's a send us a message link under the title. We'd love to hear from you so we can maybe mention you on the show at one point, like we just did. We have a YouTube channel. that's still there. We have not got any copyright issues lately, Mike, which is weird because I'm using a lot of unauthorized drops. So come listen to the Renegades while we're still here. And we would really like to get some time to put up the next video companion to our episode. So if you listen to one of these audio episodes and you feel like, you know what, I would love to see a video companion to this, send us an email and we will draft that up. But you can also listen to the audio versions on YouTube as well. So if you're busy, you're bored at work, click on YouTube and give us a listen. So we really appreciate that. Right,
and
so
I want somebody, you just talked about how we select movies. I would like for someone out there, doesn't matter who, email us a movie you want us to do, and we will do it.
It's done. Here,
you can be from Badger, Alaska, or Manuka, Illinois. It doesn't matter.
Put it in stone. The first one we get, we will do. There said
you
it.
go.
All right. So that's going to kind of wrap it up, guys. So, Mike, anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
I have a stone in my shoe, and I would like for you to remove it, please.
Yeah. Well, I say to you all, I have been treated this day with no respect. All right. So for Mike James, this is Justin, and we will see you again next time. Zaza.
Or Joey.
Or Joey.
I got a stone in my shoe, Mr. Corleone. A two-bit punk who works for me. The one who thinks he's related to you. A bastard